The best part of the Pokemon Adventures manga is seeing Pokedex holders from different generations come together and fight alongside each other. Today, I present a theoretical final chapter of Pokemon Adventures, happening after Sun and Moon and being a culmination of over 20 years of manga. Maybe this is just an elaborate fanfiction, but I think it's come together great and I'm excited to share it all with you. So, let's get right into it! This chapter would start by showing us what every Dex holder is up to at the end of Sun and Moon chapter. Imagine each of these scenarios taking up a round or two each. The character to start this off is Ruby, as he arrives in the Unova region, coming to a Pokemon musical in Nimbasa City. Ruby and his Pokemon, being contest stars of Hoenn, had been asked to come and lend their talents to the show. Ruby heads backstage and meets with the stage manager, White. The two converse and end up throwing on the show, with Mumu and Amanda delivering the final performance. Backstage, Ruby and White celebrate the success of the musical, but then they hear a bizarre noise coming from a closet behind them. The doors burst open, and an unknown beast comes out looking for a fight, with a wormhole right behind it. Ruby sends out Nana, and White sends out Barbara, both commanding attacks at the beast. Gold and Silver are hanging out at their house watching Pro Team Omega reruns on TV. This is when Green knocks on the door and enters, coming to see her brother and catching up. The three end up leaving to head to an airport. Gold is complaining that they were only invited to watch, but weren't invited to compete in a certain event. They arrive in the Alola region, and Green states that they only have a couple hours until the event starts. Gold rushes off on a skateboard, whereas Silver and Green take their time. The two of them are walking when suddenly a hole appears in the sky, with an unknown beast exiting. We then cut to Gold, much farther ahead than the other two, and unaware of whatever is happening. In fact, he's going so fast that he trips and falls off his board, scraping his knee. He's ready to walk it off when a girl comes up to him, asking if he's alright. It's Moon, and she offers to heal him up with her medicine. As they talk, she's a bit appalled by his personality, as it's just a more obnoxious version of Sun's. But they end up getting along. Moon explains she's heading to see the Battle Tree tournament, because someone close to her is competing there. Gold says he's also going to watch, but only because Silver brought him along, and he then wonders where Silver and Green were. But before he can finish his train of thought, he's interrupted by a hole erupting through the sky, and before he can ask what it is, Moon steps in, saying it is extremely dangerous. She sends out her Decidueye. Gold steps up, his knee fully recovered, and says he'll handle it, before sending out Aibo and commanding a dual chop attack. Pearl is, as always, in a rush. He excitedly arrives at the Viridian Gym, gripping his Dugtrio's Pokeball. He had reached out to Blue Oak, asking if he could have a look at the Mysteries of the Earth book that he owned the only copy of, and luckily, Blue had agreed. Pearl enters the gym, meeting with Blue, and starts to read the book, learning special techniques for him and Dugtrio. Blue and Pearl train together for a bit, and Blue decides to get some items delivered to help them train. He orders items like soft sand and an iron ball to see how they interact with Dugtrio and other ground types in the gym. The delivery man comes, being none other than Sun the courier, who was doing some work in his home region of Kanto. Sun was on his way out, but as he opens the gym's door, he sees the sight of a hole ripped through the sky. A beast that Sun recognizes as a Kartana zips out, and Sun tells Blue and Pearl to get back because of how dangerous the monster is. But a gym leader and his mentee weren't ready to step down, and the three of them send out their Pokemon, Charizard, Chimler, and Dollar. They all command flamethrower attacks on the Kartana, and it retreats into the hole. Sun says it's no good that a wormhole is appearing, especially outside of the Alola region, and says that they need to investigate. Wasting no time, Pearl hops right into the hole, riding on Railer, with Blue and Sun hopping on Charizard to fly in after him. The three of them land on a large expanse of land, completely barren and surrounded by what seem to be red castle walls. A man in a suit of armor approaches them, gripping a Master Ball. Dia could not believe it. He was finally here at Pokestar Studios, with front row tickets to the filming of the Pro Team Omega reunion show. While it was unlike him, Dia had managed to arrive so early, so he decided to explore the sets of the studio a bit. He ended up stumbling into the set of the new Doo-Wop Man movie, where Doo-Wop Man and Keldeo were fighting a Titanous Steel Pokemon. But wait a second, why weren't the cameras rolling? This fight scene was intense. They should be recording. Suddenly, Doo-Wop Man called out to Dia, telling him to get in here and help out. Dia sent out Kit, and the two trainers worked together to force the beast back into its hole. Afterward, Blake explained the situation to Dia, saying that their shoot got interrupted by a hole ripping through the sky, and that monster coming out. With the hole still open, Blake transitioned from actor mode into Interpol mode, and started researching to see what to do. He found that the same phenomenon was happening all over the world at this very instant. He called some of his supervisors, asking what the game plan was. Meanwhile, Dia was reading up on the Ultra incidents, and saw that one happened at the Viridian Gym, where he knew Pearl was. Dia immediately made up his mind. and Blake had just received orders, so the two jumped right into the hole. A Braviary is struck out of the sky by Petal Blizzard, falling to the ground. Unovan champion Black takes out his Pokeball, recalling them on, and then shakes hands with Kanto champion Red. The Battle Tree tournament is underway, and Red just advanced to the finals. The next match of the semifinals is Hoenn champion Sapphire Birch versus the Sinnoh champion Platinum Berlitz. They shake hands, and Platinum says she can't lose as it would be disappointing to someone very close to her who's watching. Sapphire scoffs and complains that her husband couldn't even be bothered to show up because he had some prior business in Unova, but regardless of if someone close to her is watching or not, she'll still win. And Sapphire does just this, with Rono defeating Pachirisu. On to the finals, Red sends out Pika and Sapphire sends out Chick. Sapphire Mega Evolves her partner, whereas Red opts to go for a Z-move, a tactic he picked up in Alola. A Gigavolt Havoc is enough to take out the Blaziken, declaring Red the winner. The four of them head out to sign autographs after the tournament, and get to meet some fans. Platinum seems to be looking for someone in the crowd, but there's no luck, she's not there. Sapphire is gradually getting angrier and angrier that someone won't answer her texts. And Black is also a bit confused why someone won't respond to his. While all of this is happening, Red realizes something's off, and yells out to the audience to get away. Red as a wormhole rips through the sky. Realizing a menace is about to exit the hole, Red figures the best way to stop it is to fight it from the source, and he hops right in, with the other 3 Dex holders following suit. X was in the midst of his biggest challenge yet, the Hoenn Battle Frontier. After mastering Mega Evolution, the Guru suggested he travel to Hoenn to learn about some of the Mega lore from there, and see if it would help him with his battling. Once he arrived, one thing led to another and he was fighting the Domace Emerald for his final symbol. Mega Charizard vs Mega Sceptile was a fierce fight, and in the end, Emerald was victorious. X was determined to try again for another shot at the symbol, but before that, he spent some time alone chatting with Emerald about their various travels. Emerald got a video call from Chris and ends up excusing himself to take it. As they talk though, X comes to get Emerald and says he needs help ASAP. Emerald drops his phone as he's being pulled along by X, until he's brought to the sight of a massive Guzzlord eating up his Battle Dome. X explains it popped out of a hole in the sky, and they need to stop the threat fast. Using their Pokemon, they force it into the hole, only to see another one about to come out. They decide to enter the hole to stop the beasts from the source. As they enter, Chris yells at them to stop from the phone, but it's too far away for either of them to hear. Chris realized the direness of the situation after watching Emerald disappear right before her eyes. Immediately, she grabbed her Pokedex and sent out an emergency notification to every Dex holder. Only 3 responded, Yellow, Whitley, and Y, the remaining Dex holders. Chris called them all to an emergency meeting and started studying Ultra Wormholes. This brought the group to the Ether Foundation, where they used their technology to track where all the wormholes led. The 4 Dex holders were all in agreement. They used the Ether technology to form one final wormhole, where they all jumped in to try and save their friends. They ended up on the roof of what appeared to be a gray castle. In the distance were the walls of another red castle, and it seemed the castle they were on was actually inside of another, much larger, almost infinitely larger, castle. The 4 tried to assess their information, with Whitley seeming to have some sort of reaction to the castle they were in. Suddenly, a Zekrom approached from below, a green-haired man riding on its back. Golden Moon fall out of a hole in the sky, landing on the peak of what seems to be an island, although there are castle walls faintly in the distance. Suddenly, a man bursts through the island riding an Aerodactyl, who Gold recognizes as Lance, a different Lance from his own world. Gold immediately sends out Togebo, and Moon sends out her Marini as well. Lance asks them why they abused their Pokemon, and he says that Togekiss and Marini would be much happier if Golden Moon were to be dead. He commands for Aerodactyl to send off a Hyper Beam attack, but the Dex holders' Pokemon shield their trainers. Lance asks why their Pokemon could possibly be happy with trainers like them. Gold explains humans are not a detriment to Pokemon, and he is able to help his Pokemon grow by hatching them. Moon insists her and her Pokemon work together to create medicine to help other Pokemon, and Lance is taken aback by both of their convictions. He tells both of them that they are worthy of joining his perfect world, and offers to use a wormhole to send them to his reality, before he destroys their own. Gold and Moon immediately say no, and Lance says that in that case, he must destroy them. He grips a Master Ball and sends out a Lugia, as Gold and Moon send out their entire teams to fight back. Ruby and White walk out of an Ultra Wormhole and are greeted by a bizarre sight in front of them. It seems to be the mansion attached to the Ether Foundation, with the ultimate weapons sprouting out of it. Not that either of the Dex holders knew what either of those were. As they explore their surroundings, they reach the top floor of the mansion, where two adults are waiting for them, alongside a Titanous green Pokemon. Lysander and Lucamine introduce themselves, explaining they're here to bring eternal beauty to every world. They introduce the Pokemon as 200% Zygarde, created from every cell of each of their worlds. When the trainers discuss their ideals, it quickly becomes a tag battle of Ruby and White versus Lysander and Lucamine. The villains work together to control Zygarde, while Ruby sends out Mumu and White uses Amanda. The Dex Holders realize they're outclassed but decide to fight to the very end. Thinking back to the musical they threw together, the two trainers decide to pull out a technique that they use together there. Ruby has his Pokemon use Water Pledge, and White's uses Grass Pledge. Together, both moves envelop the castle in a swamp, utterly disgusting the two villains. Ruby and White exclaim that even a swamp can be true beauty, and no one has the right to choose what is and isn't allowed in an eternally beautiful world. Emerald and X are both surfing on Mantine in the middle of a vast ocean. There is nothing, literally nothing, except water, and some large castle walls very far in the distance. A man dressed like a pirate comes along riding on Kyogre. He explains that they must have seen how perfect his infinite ocean was, and congratulates them both on joining him. X sits confused at the insane man's ramblings, as Emerald gets aggravated. Emerald asks Archie how many thousands of Pokemon habitats he destroyed to create this ocean. Archie laughs and says he could never count the amount of ground and grass Pokemon he destroyed the lives of for his goal. Emerald sends out his Mr. Mime to create a ground of barriers, so he and his team can stand in the ocean. X joins him, claiming his travels through the different environments of Kalos helped him grow out of his shell. Archie laughs at them and says he'll destroy both of them for his own perfect world. Both the Dex Holders send out their full teams, as well as Mega Evolving Sceptile and Kanga. A giant battle commences, with Emerald and X working in tandem and showing off their growth and teamwork skills. Emerald sends a massive Frenzy Plant right at Kyogre. Dia and Blake were both assessing the situation at their own paces. They were floating in a large void, unknown where they were. A third man floated with them as well, perhaps right next to them or far away. The void was too vast and warped to know. The man blankly stared ahead and monologued about the perfect world he created without any human emotion. Dia became anxious, wondering how he could save Pearl with the situation as it was. However, Blake was not interested in helping out, and instead actually heard out Cyrus. Blake, being a child with no moral compass or really any emotion, was honestly sympathizing with Cyrus. Dia quickly realized he would have to reason with this alternate world Cyrus and Blake in order to make any progress. As the empathizer, Dia tried to convince the two of them that they should return to their own worlds, talking about how if they went there they could feel emotions and have a true conversation about how they felt. Cyrus refused, preferring to stay in his perfect world. But Blake snapped back to reality and heard Dia. Blake demanded Cyrus to let them go so they could save the Dex Holders from wherever they were. Suddenly, a Dialga and Palkia appeared, and Dia and Blake were transported to a large red castle. They sent out their Pokemon and started exploring. Blue, Pearl, and Sun stood in the middle of a large expanse of land, while a man in a suit of armor approached them. Blue recognized the man as Guile Hideout, but thought something was off. He commanded Charizard to flamethrower the man's mask, and as it cracked open, it revealed Maxie underneath. Blue realized in whatever world he was from, this Maxie beat Archie, and won. Maxie sent out Jirachi, and commanded it to use Sandstorm, which formed itself into a massive sand version of Groudon. As the sandstorm headed for them, they realized they could not fight back, so Blue asked Pearl to have his Dugtrio burn them all underground. The three went underground and were able to avoid Maxie, but they knew they didn't have much time. Blue told Pearl and Sun it was time for a grueling training session, so they'd better get ready. Sometime later, the three kids returned to the surface, the sandstorm coming right for them. Charizard, Shimler, and Dollar stood strong, ready to fight. Blue, Pearl, and Sun all commanded the same attack. Blast Burn! The ultimate moves collided and burnt all of the sand to a crisp, annihilating Maxie's plans. Maxie laid defeated, asking how they could have powered up in such a short amount of time while hiding underground. Blue simply scoffed, and said his special skill was the trainer. Green and Silver were surrounded by a castle of ice. Both of them were well aware of who they were about to fight. Green and Silver looked at each other and suppressed their incoming panic attacks to continue on, finding their way to the masked man. Ready to fight, they sent out Granbull and Kingdra. Price smirked and walked away. As they tried to chase him, two trainers approached, ready to fight on Price's side. They were masked, brainwashed versions of Green and Silver. The good in Green and Silver looked at each other and pledged to work together to prove they were the best versions of themselves. The masked versions battled almost robotically in sync, ready to do whatever to please Price, and sending out a Ho-Oh and Lugia. After a long tag battle, the good Green and Silver barely came out on top. Price returned, shocked at the defeat, and became enraged. However, since this world's Price's masked children were perfect, he didn't have any reason to keep training himself, so he had no Pokemon ready to battle. Defeated, he let the two kids go and continue on to the Red Castle. Chris's team stared as N and Zekrom approached them. The 4 trainers sent out Pokemon to fight, which just infuriated N. He spiels about Pokemon liberation and says none of the trainers' Pokemon could possibly be happy. As he plans to unleash a Thunderbolt on the 4, Wise Croaky leaps into action and protects them all as a water veil forms around itself. N and Y both stood shocked as Croaky transformed into a brand new form, showing its battle bond and desire to protect Y. N stands flabbergasted as this was the first time this version of N ever saw a Pokemon love its trainer. Yellow and her team approached N, and she exclaimed that Pokemon are her friends. Chris held a collection of different Pokeballs, saying those balls were what brought her and her Pokemon closer to their goals. Whitley too stood up to N, saying that she loved him, but that he was wrong right now. N, his truth and ideals shattered, sat motionless, processing everything, and by doing this, he let the 4 girls escape and move into the castle. The all-star team of Red, Sapphire, Platinum, and Black stood opposed to a rainbow-wearing Giovanni and Mega Mewtwo. It was clear a tough battle had been fought, as worn-out Polly, Rono, Rapidash, and Brave were all doing their best to fight back. Sapphire, for what was probably the 12th time, demanded Giovanni stop fighting them. He replied, saying until they told him where Silver was, he would show them a world of pain. Red responded, saying he would never sell out his friend to this monster, and asked if he created this entire wormhole plan just to track down his son. Giovanni started monologuing, saying he went along with the Rainbow Rocket plan because the big boss promised him he'd be able to find a universe where Silver would love him. Red asked him what exactly he meant by the big boss, and Giovanni exclaimed that it was none of his business. While Giovanni was distracted by Red though, the remaining 3 champions landed large blows on a Mewtwo. Giovanni snapped back to the battle and had it push Aggron, Rapidash, and Braviary all out of the way, knocking the 3 Pokemon out. Red then commanded Polly to use a liquidation, and it finally knocked Mewtwo out. The defeated Giovanni recalled Mewtwo to its ball, and fainted. Just then, doors around the room all opened at the same time, and every Dex holder made their way in. The large group of 21 trainers all rejoiced, seemingly defeating Team Rainbow Rocket. The Dex holders all celebrate their victory together, but are interrupted as a new voice introduces herself. As they turn around, they see none other than Surd, slowly approaching the group. Surd reveals she is the true leader of Team Rainbow Rocket. This is no alternate universe version of Surd. This is the one from the Dex holders' original world. Surd explains her goal was always to rule all of space, and she simply used Cyrus and every other team as stepping stones to get there. She had released her Darkrai and vanished from Team Galactic, convincing everyone she had given up. However, that was all a trick and gave her time to research Ultra Space and create a large organization throughout the multiverse. She exclaimed that she always knew the only people who could stand up to her were the Dex holders, and that's why she was always so obsessed with them, and why she aimed to destroy all of them, and take every Pokedex for herself. She was impressed that even the Dex holders could defeat all of her admins, but that was fine. She had one final plan to eradicate all of them. 100 Ultra Wormholes appeared throughout the castle, and beasts all over Surd's control exited. The Dex holders all sent out their full teams and got ready for a final battle. Gold and Silver worked together to defeat a swarm of Buzzwoles. Black and White joined forces to take on Pharomosas. Every Dex holder was in the fray, fighting the endless army of beasts and giving it their all. Red was focused on Surd and approached her with a Pokeball in his hand, demanding she stop this. On cue, an Nihilego wrapped around her, and she fused with it, telling him he had no shot at defeating her or her perfect plan. Red sent out and Mega Evolved Soar and got ready to fight. The Hoenn Dex holders were fighting together to take down a massive Guzzlord, and it was getting dire when Emerald Sceptile was defeated. While Ruby and Sapphire continued fighting, Emerald looked around trying to find a way to win. He had an idea and ran it by the other 2 Dex holders, who were both in agreement. Sapphire sent out Troppy, and the 3 of them rode it into a wormhole in the sky. Platinum had just defeated a Blacephalon, and Empoleon was weakened but ready to keep going. Suddenly, a Naganadel flew towards her at an extremely fast speed, and launched a mass of corrosive poison towards it. Platinum couldn't react in time, and was prepared for Empoleon to be taken out, but at the last second, an Air Slash destroyed the poison, and saved Empoleon. Decidueye entered the fight, and was ready to fight alongside Empoleon. Moon ran up and hugged Platinum, saying it was time for her and her sister to fight together. The battles raged on, as beasts fell left and right, but so too did the hero's Pokemon. Red was trying his best to take down Surd and Nihilego's HP, but he was down to his last Pokeball as he sent in Pika. Suddenly, the Hoenn Dex Holders exited a wormhole, and Emerald stepped into the battlefield. He reveals that the three of them traveled between worlds and gathered dirt from every beast's home. He used his skills as the Calmer, and calmed down every beast, ending practically every fight. However, one beast still stood, the Nihilego that was fused with Surd. Surd laughed, saying her own will had suppressed Nihilego's response to its home. She looked around, seeing every Pokemon defeated except for Red and Pika standing against her. She claims the fight is over and prepares to destroy Pika. Red gets ready to call for a Thunderbolt, but Pika's strength feels greater than ever before. Yellow can tell how Pika is feeling, and informs Red she thinks it can use the Megavolt from back when they defeated Lance. As Pika's strength grows, unknown to Red, his Z-Ring starts resonating with it, and it powers up even more. The Megavolt was 10 times as strong as Thunderbolt, but this move had to be 50, no, 100 times stronger. Red called out for Pika to finish it. With 10 million volt Thunderbolt, Pika unleashed a great force and knocked Surd and Nihilego apart, knocking out both of them. Knocked out Ultra Beasts started waking up and returned to all of their own worlds. The Dex Holders went through the castle and apprehended every member of Rainbow Rocket, and finally returned to their own world. After the authorities took care of the situation, the 21 Dex Holders all gathered at Oaks to relax and celebrate their victory. Yellow and Moon talk about how they heal Pokemon together. Platinum asks what Sky Trainers are all about. White gives out her business card to a few interested trainers. Finally, Oak gives a speech congratulating everyone on their victories.